Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. Happy New Year and happy Championship Sunday. Injury Report edition coming to you. We're looking at all the fantasy relevant factors to get a leg up on what's going down on Sunday. Plenty of COVID, plenty of nicks and bruises, plenty of stuff to talk about. As always, I am joined by none other than PFF's own Andrew Erickson, Dwain McFarland. Andrew, you first. How are you? Wearing your Mac Jones shirt pretty well.
Oh, of course. I'm wearing my Mac Jones shirt. No, I'm doing good. Ready to, take home some fantasy football championships this weekend. I'm pumped.
That's the goal. Dwain, how are you?
Good, man. I'm just here to take home fantasy football championships like Andrew. No, man, I'm good. I'm excited.
Andrew,
I just got through eating a huge brisket lunch. So went and had some good barbecue. So yeah, man, I'm ready.
Andrew's like that dude that's seen 20 freaking championships growing up in New England. He's wearing his Mac Jones shirt with a Brady jersey over his other shirt.
He's spoiled. Andrew's spoiled.
I remember I stumbled upon like this article or something that was like Patriots fans are the most depressed fans or something like ridiculous like that. I was like, really? Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've been pretty happy with the last 20 years.
That article, I'm going to reject that thesis. So as always, we'll go through position by position, touching on all the key injuries. And with that, let's get going. Kirk Cousins, the unvaccinated Kirk Cousins, ruled out with COVID, meaning Sean Mannion will be starting against Green Bay. I don't think we need to go too deep into this. You're still starting Dalvin Cook. You're still starting Justin Jefferson. It's fair to drop them in the ranks just a little bit. I think the bigger thing is that now with Conklin and KJ Osborne, these are now guys that I would really try to avoid starting, particularly with Conklin dealing with that hamstring injury. Dwain, on the same page?
Same page, man. I put Jefferson as a high-end wide receiver 2 instead of a high-end wide receiver 1. So you're still using him. Haven't dropped Conklin down, but I will. KJ Osborne, if you're using my ranks, it'll be tough for you to find a way to start it.
Lamar Jackson allegedly has a chance to play through this ankle injury, but we've seen him on the practice field once. He was limping all over the place. Athletics, Jamison Hensley already reporting that Tyler Huntley is trending towards starting. Andrew, we've had some okay enough Tyler Huntley experiences. I like the guys at backup quarterback, but I can't get behind really ranking him as a true QB1. I have Trey Lance as my QB11, then Taysom Hill, then Russell Wilson, then Tyler Huntley at QB14. Where do you have him ranked? Am I even being aggressive here? Because I feel like more teams than not should not be starting him, but I have already been seeing a steady stream of start sits considering Huntley amongst these guys.
Yeah, I have him in that same tier. I have him at quarterback 15. So guys, I'm going to start him over like Carr, Tannehill, Jones, like a lot of guys like that you really weren't playing because we just lost like so many quarterbacks to COVID. Kirk Cousins, for example, if you were going to start Kirk Cousins, I'm okay with now plugging in Tyler Huntley if you don't have anybody else to pick up. So I think that outside the top 12 in the 15 range is right about right.
Yeah, ripping through some of his other quarterback news. Justin Fields will not be out there. He's questionable with an ankle, but Nagy has already said that. Andy Dalton's starting anyway, back from the groin injury. Screw you, Nick Foles, and your comeback. We're going back to the Red Rocket for whatever reason. Drew Lock will be back out there again with Teddy Bridgewater still not practicing with a concussion. Not really throwing to any wide receivers we've ever heard of, but he'll be out there nevertheless. Jimmy Garoppolo not practicing with the thumb. Hold that thought. Jared Goff is doubtful with the knee, so more Tim Boyle, obviously not playing him. Note that Carson Wentz still on the COVID list, but sounds like he does have a chance to clear it and then suit up for Sunday. But, given what we've seen from players coming off the COVID list and the general Colts passing game in recent weeks, no one's really playing him. So, Dwain, this kind of takes us to Taysom Hill, obviously off the COVID list, and Trey Lance looking more and more like the starter. How do you kind of have this tier rank? Because we talked about in the game preview pod, and I think Andrew has these guys in the same spot as well. There is kind of this QB1 borderline tier of mobile quarterbacks. How do you line up Lance against guys like Taysom, Russ, Huntley? Because it seems like we're still not quite putting him in to the Burrow, Herbert, Stafford kind of area.
Right. But these quarterbacks keep going down. So Trey Lance just keeps moving up the ranks this week. He started off at 12. He's up to 10 today. He didn't even have to do anything. He's just falling into this. But I do like him over Taysom Hill. I think it's a healthier offense, right? You got more weapons around you. With Hill, is there a receiver you like? On the same.
Traquan's hurt now too.
Traquan's got a Smith injury. Traquan Smith's got a chest injury.
Traquan's got a Smith injury.
Traquan's got a Smith. Dude, there's so many guys with the last name Smith. That would almost be like COVID. It would be a bad problem if you had a Smith injury. I've got Trey Lance at 10. I've got Taysom Hill at 11. And we just mentioned Huntley. I've got Huntley right behind them at 13. Have all of those guys ahead of Russ Wilson, Tua, Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, Mac Jones, those types. No offense, Andrew, on the Mac Jones thing. Sorry.
It's okay. It's fantasy.
Moving on to some running backs. Deandre Swift practiced in full all week with the shoulder injury. I've talked about some fear of reaggravation and stuff with this and just wondering like, hey, if he's out there, would he even get the full allotment? Because as we saw throughout this year, like he's made so much of his living on checkdowns in the fourth quarter of games. I get it. I've seen the Seattle Seahawks most receptions allowed to running back stat. I see the picture, but I was hesitant until we got Dan Campbell coming out here and saying, quote unquote, we feel like we're in a place where let's go, cut him loose, and let him continue to grow and get better. So before I saw that quote, I had Swift as my RB 25. Now I am leaning towards getting him more into that RB, probably 15, 16 area around Singletary, Darrell Williams, Josh Jacobs types. Dwain, am I reading too much into coach speak? Am I just being ridiculous here? What are your thoughts on Swift?
No, I think obviously he still comes with risk because we could have a three-way backfield, situation. Like, Williams will be involved. We know that we'll probably have, what's the other guy's name now? Going Craig Reynolds. It's like such
Craig,
a generic.
Yeah.
The other guy.
No, the other guy. Yeah, not Godwin. Godwin, like my concern is like he only gets the Godwin role, but I think you're right. Like I don't think we're overreading coach speak to this point. Like, look, they've held him out a long time. I'm assuming that when Swift plays, he's really going to be healthy, and they don't have any reason to risk him. So, I mean, as bad as the Lions are, I still don't think they want to get a good player hurt. So I think we should be in a situation where I'm going to move him up the board a little bit as well. I had him at 23. So I'm going to move him out of tier 4 up into tier 3, which has got guys like Patterson, Nick Chubb, which we can talk about Kareem Hunt in a minute, now that that's a dual backfield, Rashad Penny. I think he belongs in that range, but I'm not going to put him up there, with the Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, who's got a full workload. I'm not playing him over Devin Singletary, who's an every down back. So I'm going to have him below all those guys, but I do need to move him up some.
I think another guy that will be in that group, depending on how these things shake out, could be Boston Scott. And that is if Jordan Howard ends up joining Miles Sanders on the bench. Sanders out with the hand. Howard is officially questionable with a stinger. Andrew, I'm kind of viewing Scott right now as more of like a really solid RB3. I have him as my RB 27 there with like Kareem Hunt, AJ Dillon, some of those guys. But hey, if we get Jordan Howard out of the picture, Scott does become someone we're trying to actively start. What do you make of these Eagles running backs, depending on the Howard status?
Yeah, I got Howard at 25 and Scott at 31. So I think that Scott would definitely move up to at least 25 and then probably more closer towards inside the top 20. I have Singletary, Rashad Penny, Elijah Mitchell wants to figure out what his deal is going on. So I think that Scott's probably a pretty solid start. Like, we don't know what his receiving role is going to necessarily be. We don't know how much he's going to be used in the passing game, but if he's going to see the majority of carries in a pretty good matchup, you kind of should be. I mean, what's the difference between him and Ronald Jones? Like, it's another good matchup. This guy who's going to get a lot of the early down work, except there's no Keyshawn Vaughn. It's Kenneth Gainwell instead. So yeah. I mean, he's not playing the Giants, which is obviously like, that Boston Scott always scores touchdowns against the Giants.
Giants,
but yeah, I think that, I'd rather play him over like Dare Ungabawale, like as another one of these like waiver wire running backs. Like his role is like, who knows? Like, honestly, like there's a lot of question marks with him, and he plays on Jacksonville. Like, we know that the Eagles are probably going to at least put up points, which some of these other fringy running backs, like, you just don't know.
Andrew mentioned Elijah Mitchell. He has been back to limited practices all week with that knee injury. Seems to be trending towards suiting up, and he would be back into auto start RB1 territory if healthy enough to suit up against the Houston Texans. If not, Jeff Wilson will continue to be a more than solid upside RB2 in his absence. Dwain, we did get some bad news this morning that Antonio Gibson, not dealing with a lower body injury, but now COVID, leaving him extremely unlikely to play. What are your expectations for Jarrett Patterson? Because this Washington offense looks absolutely horrendous. With that said, Gibson's out, and as we know, J.D. McKissic remains on IR with a concussion. So Jarrett Patterson seems like he'll be a lead back, although we do need to keep in mind Jonathan Williams is on the roster as well.
Yeah, I don't think that Patterson's going to be the lead back. Like, that's the problem. I just don't think we know. I mean, if you look at the last 3 weeks, the snaps for Patterson versus, Williams, they're pretty close. And in week 16, Jonathan Williams actually led the way with 40% of the snaps versus 25% for Patterson. Patterson has been the guy getting more of the rushing attempts, 20%, 19%, 45%, and then Williams with 20%, 5%, 15%. So my guess is that Patterson gets most of the early down work, that Jonathan Williams takes over most of the passing down work, and maybe like, another 20 to 30% of the rushing attempts. So, I mean, if we could get Patterson somewhere between 50 and 60% of the rushing attempts, but not involved at all in the passing game, then you essentially get like the thing that everybody was bitching about all season with Antonio Gibson until the last few weeks, with arguably a lesser talent, but maybe a fresher and healthier talent. So I have not adjusted Patterson yet in my ranks, but looking at it right now, actually, yeah, I did kind of bump him up some, but I think he's a low end RB3. Like for now, I don't see how I can trust him for more than that, given the way they've used both guys.
Yeah, I'm RB33, so very much on the same page. Clyde Edwards-Helaire not practicing all week with the shoulder / collarbone issue, although Andy Reid did say that he's comfortable playing him without practicing. Also keep in mind that Jerick McKinnon could be activated from IR. It'll be a situation to monitor into Sunday morning, but Darrell Williams will be set up as an upside RB2 if CEH is ultimately sidelined. And honestly, at least in DFS land, I wouldn't mind going to Darrell regardless of if Edwards-Helaire ends up being deemed active or not. Saquon Barkley did kick off the week with the DNP, but he is back limited. Looks like he will play through the ankle injury. At this point, he is more of a borderline RB2 with them continuing to feature Devontae Booker pretty much side by side him. Just a couple more situations I think we really need to talk about. Kareem Hunt did return to practice on Friday with his ankle injury. Dwain, this was a situation earlier in the year where we kind of saw the workloads Hunt and Chubb were getting, and they were really outperforming what we would expect running backs to do with those touches. We know Chubb is great. We know Hunt is great, but this Browns offense has been the opposite of great for most of the year. How are you treating Chubb and Hunt here inside of, again, far from humming version of this Browns offense and a good matchup, but with limited touches?
Right. I am assuming that Hunt's going to play this weekend right now in my rank. So that's the way I've got it until we hear something different. So I've got Chubb at 15, which is definitely the lowest I've had him in multiple weeks. I've had him inside my top 5 any week that we've known that Hunt has been out. So yeah, I think you've just got to downgrade it. So what you can expect is for Nick Chubb to handle somewhere between 40 and 60% of the rushing attempts and to never see the field on a passing down, which he really hasn't anyway, but we had just beginning 70 to 80% of the rushing attempts when it's just him and Dearness Johnson. So basically you just have Nick Chubb's attempts are going to get cut by about 20, 25%. And then you're going to have Kareem Hunt take over all the Dearness Johnson work and then take some of the work from Chubb. So I've got Kareem Hunt at RB26 right now, but knowing like he does carry an upside like there. Like we've seen Hunt have these boom games because he can't come up with the explosive plays. He can stay involved in the passing game, even in a bad Browns attack. He could come through, but because of what you just talked about, how bad their offense has been overall over the last month, I've moved Hunt. Typically if Hunt was playing, he'd be inside my top 24. I have him outside of it. The one thing to keep in mind is the Browns should be the healthiest that they've been all season. Not all season, but in about a month on the offensive line. So I expect, they should be a little better than what we've seen over the last month.
News for the Jets. Tevin Coleman hit the COVID list, potentially setting up Michael Carter for one of his biggest workloads and weeks. Before hearing about the COVID issue, I have Michael Carter as my RB22, but Andrew, as I'm looking at it more, got some guys I have in front of him: Javonte, Damian Harris, Cordero Patterson, Rashad Penny, Zeke, Josh Jacobs. It makes me want to move Carter a little bit more up into that area. How are you kind of approaching with this? Because we know Zach Wilson doesn't love to check the ball down. We know Ty Johnson, your guy, could potentially be more involved too, but it does seem like Michael Carter should be seeing something in the line of 20 combined carries and targets this week.
Yeah, I think that he's like a solid volume play, but he plays for the Jets. Yeah. Like, how many points are they going to score against? I mean, I just don't think we need to convince ourselves to play these running backs and receivers on these bad like we know who the bad offenses are. And like, talking about the football team, it's like I have Patterson at RB41. Like, I just don't see. I just like. I have no faith. I have no faith in these guys playing on these just horrible teams, especially when it's against the Bucs. You mentioned Zach Wilson has not. He's not Mike White. He's not Captain Checkdown. He's looking to throw the ball down the field, and that's Tampa Bay doesn't get run on. You can beat them in the passing game through receivers or through the running backs, but Wilson has not shown that he's willing to check it down to Michael Carter consistently. So I still have him as, at the end of RB2 range.
Moving right along. Damon Harris is actually listed as questionable with the hamstring, but the Patriots do this each and every week. Not worried about him. We did see Ramonte Stevenson return from the COVID list, but as we've seen with some of these players, don't immediately have the full-time role. So they are facing the Jaguars. I love Damon Harris as a tournament play in DFS because I think if Stevenson was out, like he'd be a top 5 play on the week. And I still think he has a chance for multi-touchdown upside with 15 to 20 carries in fantasy land. Better off treating Harris as a lower end touchdown dependent RB2. Stevenson, somewhat more of a flex play. I'll be picking the other guy in most close start sit questions. Broncos running backs, Javonte with a knee, Melvin thumb and hip. They've been limited all week, but they are fine. Could certainly see some larger workloads than usual with all those wide receiver injuries. Cam Akers, unlikely to play in week 17 now due to that, freaking Achilles injury that they're trying to rush him back from. It was expected to be a Sonny Michel show anyway, but now we know even more so for sure. Last point here, James Conner did return to a limited practice on Friday, with his heel injury still shaping up as pretty much like a game time call. Dwain, how far do you see yourself dropping Edmonds? Because right now, man, I put him as my RB3, assuming Conner is out. Like that's how high his freaking ceiling is as just the workhorse running back in this Cardinals offense. 90% snaps, and we know he can catch 8 to 10 passes. But with this Cowboys-Cardinals game being at 4:00, like where would you kind of be treating Edmonds if Conner ends up playing? Because I know we have a lot of questions about like how confident should I feel having to pivot off Edmonds if we do end up hearing that Conner's going to be out there.
I mean, obviously Edmonds is coming down from there. I mean, I've got him at 7, so I love him, as well. And I don't know that I could even argue with top 3 just because he's so involved in the passing game. It's a big game total at 51.5, decent implied points. Like it's one of the actual games on the slate we want to watch. So it's hard to not be behind like Edmonds if he's going to be the only guy. But if Conner does play, and good God, like Cliff Kingsbury, does the guy have a decision that's not a game time decision? I think he decides what he's going to wear at game time. He's deciding what yes, everything is at game time. Like all decisions are made in the Cliff Kingsbury household at game time. So if we do hear that Conner's going to be back, I would still expect Chase Edmonds to lead this backfield. So I don't honestly think I would be overly concerned about a pivot off. I think you're going to lose something, obviously, if Conner plays. But I mean, a guy that can't practice all week just gets in a limited on Friday, didn't practice all last week. Man, I don't feel that confident about James Conner. He won't, he'll be a low end RB3, even if active for me. Yeah. So I just don't see him being a huge factor. Like to put a pin in it, I think you would probably move Chase Edmonds down to high end RB2. From right now, you got him as a high end RB1.
I was looking kind of like that RB19, maybe RB20 sounds about right.
I don't think that James Conner's going to play. I mean, we've done this with Cliff Kingsbury, with DeAndre Hopkins. Oh, game time decision. Oh, Kyler Murray, he's almost ready. 3 weeks later, he's almost ready. Like he's not playing. And so from a DFS perspective, I'm building cash lineups with Chase Edmonds. That's what I'm doing. And if we still don't it's a risk I'm willing to take, the chance, but like Dwayne said, it's not like Edmonds is just going to be totally dust. If Conner plays,
I like him in tournaments too. If this news is enough to keep people from just totally steaming it, what I mean? So he'll be an easy player to pivot to though in the late window because his salary is $5,700 on DK. So I haven't been staring at my DK screen all day or anything, but
can't stress enough how good of a play it becomes on drafting. Like Andrew and I in the DFS pod were talking about how they're more viable cash game backs this week than we've seen maybe all year long. But Edmonds rises to the top of that list if we get for sure confirmation Conner's out. But to Andrew's point, I would, if that Girl Scout shows out, pulls that pistol out of her Girl Scout bag, I would say that Conner is going to be out of this one. Now with the wide receivers, AJ Brown. How are people still freaking out about an AJ Brown DNP on Thursday? This happens all the time. He comes back on Friday. He says he's fine. Calf injury is no big deal. Just a regular maintenance day. Continue to treat AJ.
He DNPs on Thursdays almost as much as he gets hurt in a game.
AJ Brown DNPing on Thursdays. Cliff Kingsbury making game time decisions on everything.
AJ Brown didn't DNP last Thursday. He scored a bunch of fantasy points.
There we go.
That's
Tell
true.
him, Andrew. Tell him. Antonio Brown, however, we did have a more unfortunate Thursday DNP. tweaked his ankle during the week. He is now being set up as a game time decision. They said they're going to test it out. It doesn't sound like the most severe thing in the world, but that's just kind of me not going off of all that much other than a Bruce Arians quote. So we'll see with AB if he's healthy enough to be out there. We know he's a wide receiver 1. With that said, Mike Evans has a chance to play through that hamstring injury. He's off the COVID list. He did return to practice on Thursday, and he's listed as questionable. Andrew, how much concern do you have for these guys playing through the pain a little bit, and particularly with Evans also coming off the COVID list in the last week?
Yeah, and I'm definitely concerned about Mike Evans in terms of, what his role. I mean, this isn't a matchup where they necessarily need Mike Evans to do a lot. He could just kind of be out there, just kind of like getting in his conditioning. Like we've seen it before. Tyler Johnson got plenty of cardio last week. Trust me, I know, because I was following it very, very closely because I had to play him somewhere. So they don't need Mike Evans to beat the Jets. If Antonio Brown's out there, we've seen him just get, hyper targeted by Tom Brady. He had 50% of the targets last week. So yeah, like Evans, I think that you're hoping Evans just like catches a touchdown, like has his 1 for 1 for 1, stat line that he just occasionally puts up. So he won't necessarily dud your lineup, but I think that there are better options you can go towards. And especially because, the Buccaneers could also just run the football with Ronald Jones against the Jets. Like there's a lot of ways you can beat this Jets team.
I think with formats where you only have to start 2 receivers and maybe you don't have a flex, Mike Evans is out this week. You're not playing him, even if he's active. Like now, once you get into the deeper formats or you got something that's 2 receivers, 2 flex, it's going to be hard to not have Mike Evans in your lineup. But if you're one of those smaller formats that, and I don't know why you play in one of those, there's more good players to use and love, right, than the 8 that you guys are using every week. So if you're in one of those, though, you're going to have Mike Evans on your bench.
Looking at kind of my wide receivers in the 20s, the Cooks, Mooney's, Beckham's, Van, Devontae Smith, I would have Evans above those guys. But once we started to look at, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Hunter Renfrow, Christian Kirk, Russell Gage, I think I'd be taking those guaranteed targets over Evans. Similar page, Dwayne?
Yep.
Cool. Yep. Fantastic. Another guy in that group, Marquise Brown, didn't practice on Thursday or Friday with an illness. Man, these Ravens, they have COVID problems too, but just the non-COVID illnesses, I feel like Baltimore gets these more than just about anyone.
Cake on that one. Yeah. He and freaking Lamar Jackson get more tummy aches than anybody I've ever known.
Quit freaking making out, guys, whatever you're doing. So I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully Hollywood plays through the pain. Has he's tied with Devontae Adams right now for the 3rd longest streak with at least 5 receptions this season. So, if he's out there, even with Tyler Huntley under center, he's firmly in the wide receiver 3 play. Also keep an eye on Devin Duvernay. He should be back from this ankle injury. And man, if we do have walk-ins, Duvernay, Marquise out there, that's going to be hurting Rashad Bateman's potential. But obviously these guys are all nothing more than wide receiver 3 types at best. With the Jets now, Andrew, we were talking about it. I think I'm back in on it. If you want to get Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp in your cash game lineup, you need to go cheap at wide receiver in addition to quarterback and tight end. And I think Braxton Berrios at 3.7K might be our guy. Elijah Moore, he was being called 50-50. He's out. Jamison Crowder with the calf, he's doubtful. Andrew, we got to get Braxton Berrios in there, man. This is the week.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say I built a Tom Brady, Brown, Gronk stack, and Berrios just fit right in there, nice and smooth. So I could fit him jamming a bunch of other stuff.
Like a glove.
So yeah, Berrios beneath 4K. There's not a lot. We lost Josh Palmer, as we'll get into as an option because some of the Chargers guys came back. So Berrios at 3,700. Strong target share last week, strong route participation. Is in the slot, and give it to Berrios. Every time he plays, he has a super high target rate.
Great, man. I want to see the guy play a full game anyway. I want to see it.
Look, I have him wide receiver 42 overall. So, you season longers out there, don't be going crazy on Berrios.
I'm at 45.
Okay. Yeah. So we're not going too crazy season
Where
longers.
Are you at? Where are you at? Andrew's going to throw a 30 out there.
Well, he was at 59, but I have to move him up.
Yeah, no, I was the one that was having to try to convince him. So we just he needs a cereal deal, man. Just give me a nice bowl of Berrios.
Braxton Berrios sounds like it should that should be a cereal deal. There's Berrios.
We'll have to have our our agency company that changes tight ends to wide receivers. We can also pick up some cereal.
We're expanding the brand.
All right, Emmanuel Sanders questionable with a knee injury. Seemed like something went wrong during practice. Dwayne, we've seen Isaiah McKenzie step in for Cole Beasley, but Beasley Beasley is back. Gabriel Davis is the next man up if Sanders is out. We have a little bit of uncertainty with Davis coming back from the COVID list. Is he at 100%? Maybe Jake Kumaro could stay a little more involved than we would like. But man, if Sanders is out, how high up are you putting Gabe Davis into the ranks? Because he's someone that we saw, 2 weeks ago, give us true multi-touchdown upside in the absence of Manny Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you get games, I went back and looked, like, it's crazy. I started looking at all of Gabe Davis's finishes. Like, every time he's been like inside the top 30, like anytime this guy gets over 35% of the routes, it's like wheels up. Like, which is crazy. You don't see that for anyone. So, I mean, essentially anytime he's had at least 35% of the routes, he's been at minimum a wide receiver 3. And then the last 2 weeks where he had 80 and 90% of the routes, right? We also got a wide receiver 4 finish out of him. So the way I'm looking at, Davis this week, and it only is because of the COVID thing, I'm putting him in that mid wide receiver 3 tier. If I was not worried about any lingering effects from COVID, he would be a wide receiver 2.
Traquan Smith, he's out. Chest injury. We don't really care. It's the freaking Saints.
I was going to say, throw that one down
right now. Do keep an eye. We got Traquan out. We got Mark Ingram questionable with a knee. Look, you're starting Alvin Kamara regardless. I get that. But again, just more DFS side of things. If you want to go up to the top of that salary scale, yeah, you got Jonathan Taylor. He'll be chalky as usual. Hasn't caught a pass in 3 weeks. Keep that in mind. Austin Eckler coming back from the COVID list. And now Alvin Kamara going up against the Panthers defense that seems to be losing, a different defensive starter by the week. Not a ton to play for these days. I do like Kamara as a tournament play, particularly if Ingram now is going to be at less than 100%. Broncos wide receiver room, Judy and Patrick are on the COVID list. And Fangio said like Sutton could be too, like gave us like a weird 50-50 answer on it. So that doesn't sound good. Andrew, let's imagine in a quick world where Sutton is somehow the only guy that is not on the COVID list. How high would you be willing to play him? Personally, I still don't think I could rank him inside of top 24.
I mean, it's tough. We saw him obviously be productive in the earlier part of the season, 24% target
yes,
share.
Yes, I could. Okay, I take that back.
Jerry
top
Jeudy,
15 or so. But yes,
yeah, man, you got to have him in the top 20.
And Tim Patrick he's also on the COVID list. So we know the targets. I think it's good for Noah Fant. He was someone I was really low on, but now we're taking away 2 bodies that are taking away targets in this offense. It's a good matchup for tight ends because the Chargers have been obviously faced a lot of great tight ends this year. I think that also if you're looking for a punt tight end, it's interesting because Fangio mentioned that they're going to change their personnel plays based on who they have. So for me, it's okay, they're going to use more two tight end sets. So more Noah Fant and more Albert O. So Albert O, he sees just almost as many targets as Noah Fant anyway. He's someone that's kind of, I think, as a DFS punt play, you go with Albert O. I think that I haven't seen what his price is unless he's stone min, but I think that's kind of the way I would approach it. I mean, Sutton, I think I would still put him probably I don't know. It's tough. I think probably my top 30 at least. If all those guys are out, I mean, we know he's going to get the targets. We've seen him. He's also a good wide receiver. We know he's going to spin the targets that have been the issue with him. So, I mean, he's probably on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues because he's just been god awful for so long, ever since Judy came back. So if you need an upside receiver that's going to get, north of double-digit targets, has touchdown equity, I don't mind Sutton, especially with Locke, because Locke likes to chuck the ball down the field.
I lied. He definitely would be in my top 24 after putting an extra 10 seconds of thought into it. With that in mind, though, I don't know about top 20.
It's an 8 out of 10 wide receiver strength of schedule, 92.1 wide receiver cornerback.
Yeah, but he's got 0 out of 10 at quarterback, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, this is your guy, Drew. This is your guy, Drew Lock.
For specific reasons about how bad he is. You need to add context, Dwayne. You know that more than anyone.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to say anything bad about Drew Lock on a show that you're doing. So, but Portland's, I have him at 21.
Okay. I would put him right behind Christian Kirk at wide receiver 21. Great. I love it. We're on the same page, everyone. Sorry about that awkward silence. Moving right along here. I thought Dwayne had a little more to give us, but you know what? He's a family man. He's got other priorities. Rondale Moore back to practice with the ankle. Still shaping up as a game time decision. You're not really playing him. Just something to keep in mind, with Chase Edmonds' potential target share underneath areas of the field. Nelson Aguilar ruled out the concussion. More N'Keal Harry. Maybe some more Jacoby Myers goodness in the underneath areas of the field. Either way, Patriots passing game. We kind of know what they are at this point. Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond on the COVID list. Expect Amon-Ra St. Brown to keep eating. I currently have him as my wide receiver 18. Dwayne, you about in the same area?
Yeah, I got him at 22. But yeah, I mean, like he's in your top 24, period.
Absolutely. Giants, similar thing. So this will be a fun case study. We got all the Broncos receivers out. We got Cortland Sutton as someone that we're confident, at least, putting him into the top 24. Now for the Giants, we got Darius Slayton on the COVID list. John Ross is out with a knee. Colin Johnson's out with a hamstring. Kadarius Toney is out with a shoulder. Kenny Golladay is the only active receiver on this roster. Andrew, how high up can we go with Kenny Golladay? Like, it's fantasy football. It's supposed to be fun. People have the championship on the line. What you say in these next 15 seconds will ultimately, make or break you, man.
I mean, he's still not ranked very, very high. Like, that's the thing. It's just, he's had opportunities like this before. Like there have been receivers that missed time this year. Kadoni has missed time. Shepard has missed time. I know we talked about Evan Ingram a couple of weeks back, but this is it. Like, this is his opportunity. Like, all these guys are out and he did nothing because this offense is anemic and just can't move the ball with Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm, the ultimate quarterback duo under center for Big Blue. So for Golladay, yeah, you're hoping he scores a touchdown. The Bears have allowed the second most receiving touchdowns of wide receivers. And that's it. Like, that's what you're hoping. He gets a touchdown, gets you 7 points, and you call it a day. So again, I feel way more confident about Sutton because we've actually seen him produce this year something. Like, we haven't gotten anything from Golladay all year long. So, probably at the back end of, wide receiver, between wide receiver 40 and 36 for me. Like, still don't really want to play Golladay.
I think that's more than fair. Dwain, similar thoughts?
Similar thoughts.
Gotta love
Didn't
it.
even budge on Galladay. Like, I'm where Andrew's.
Like, not moving him.
He's had his chance. Like, he's already basically been the only guy. So this isn't really, they're in very desperate times now, but we've already been in a situation where he's the main guy. So I don't just really consider this to be that much different.
Brute.
I'd rather play Braxton Berrios, and I'm not lying.
Braxton Berrios week, all wheels up. Chargers activated Mike Williams and Jalen Guyton off the COVID list, takes away the Josh Palmer luster just a tad. I would expect them to kind of rotate things more evenly between this trio on the outside, but in terms of season-long options, try to find a better one. Nick Westbrook.
Would you sit Mike Williams? Like, knowing he's been on the COVID list, he's really up and down. I know Denver's has a lot of guys.
I have him as my wide receiver 34. I play guys like Pittman, Parker.
Okay. So not high on Mike Williams though this week though.
No, are you?
You're basically ranking Mike Williams about where he's performed over the last 2 months.
Fancy that. Wild concept there from Mr. Hartitz. Nick Westbrook and Keeney off the COVID list. He'll be wide receiver 2, but we all know it's just A.J. Brown's world there in the Tennessee passing game. Laviska Shenault off the COVID list. For you Tavon Austin truthers out there, something to keep in mind. But yeah, just avoid that freaking Jaguars offense.
Let's see if Shenault can just do what Tavon Austin.
What if he's RB1? What if
we're just a couple more injuries away. From Laviska really getting going. Marquez Valdes-Scantling also off the COVID list. I think he is a boomer bust wide receiver 4. A big noteworthy thing. Obviously, you're not trying to fire up MVS, but he does take away from the Allen Lazard luster just a bit. Where do you have these guys ranked, Dwayne? I do have Lazard ahead of MVS, but I did have to bump him down kind of out of the wide receiver 3 territory now that he's back.
Same way. I have Lazard at 48. I've got MVS at 49. Like, I just like, they cancel each other out a lot of the time. You could still get one of them to come through and give you a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 performance. We just don't ever know which one it's going to be whenever they're both playing.
It's also the game environment is just not ideal for ancillary receivers. Like, -5 degree weather, this terrible quarterback on the other side of the ball. Like, I could see AJ Dillon touch the ball 40 times and the Vikings being like, you know what? I don't want to tackle this guy. Like, I can't feel my arms, my legs. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, that spread moved 6 points today with the Cousins news. So
yeah, that's rough. Zach Ertz practicing in full as we move on to tight end. Hamstring is not an issue. He has led the way in targets with DeAndre Hopkins out. He is cemented as an upside tight end 1 this week. Also, Pat Freiermuth back, missed last week with the concussion. He's practicing in full, should be good to go. Perfectly viable borderline tight end 1 option. If he's out there and you have someone like Tyler Conklin listed as questionable with that hamstring and the quarterback downgrade, I would be firing up Freiermuth over him. Another guy who I hope wasn't your starting tight end, but if he was, Jared Cook, he is now on the COVID list. Go get Freiermuth. Otherwise, James O'Shaughnessy, all you truthers out there, hip, he is out. Offensive engine. That was a fun tweet from NBC Sports Edge. Good job by you guys. I'll call them by their real name when they actually send out a good headline. And unfortunately, everyone's favorite DFS streamer, Mo Alley Cox, it looks like it's not going to work out because Jack Doyle was able to practice in full fashion on Friday with the knee and ankle issues. He is officially officially listed as questionable, but we're expecting him to play through that. So with this in mind, like, okay, we're not going to a Jaguars backup tight end with Conklin being out. As much as I would love to sit here and tout a Chris Herndon week, I don't think I can for my, professional reputation. So I think the only question is really, do we want anything to do with these Chargers backups? We got Donald Parham, obviously still coming back from that concussion. It's Steven Anderson. It's Trey McKitty. Andrew, you're the king of sub 3K tight ends, man. Why not Steven Anderson?
No, I mean, like, I know he has like a wide receiver background, but there's just it's
he
like
play basketball. That's what really matters.
It's just, I need there to be a clear role where I know that he's like at least the first option in the tight end room, but it's why Tyler Kroft was so perfect for this role. And, he's still on the COVID list. So unfortunately we will have no Tyler Kroft.
It's probably not a good weekend to get cheap, honestly, on tight end, just because the studs all have great matchups. Kelsey, Kittle, and Gronk all have great matchups. One of them is going to smash. So I think it's
Kittle too, man. I think it could be Kittle.
Yeah, it could be Kittle. It's going to be hard to punt though on tight end this week, I think.
Yeah, in tournaments you don't want to punt. I think in cash it's okay. Like if you want to play, like we talked about on the show, like Cole Kmet 3,400 is fine. Yeah, because it's a decent matchup.
I think Kmet's probably the play in cash.
Yeah, he's always been the cash play because he never catches touchdowns, but he always has like 5 targets and 5 catches in every game. So yeah, Kmet. Even
though we know Jimmy Graham's going to score his no trade clause touchdown. So Dwain, sound like you didn't have any more thoughts on this tight end group.
No, I mean, I've been looking at it for like the last 2 days. Like, is there a name that pops up? There's just not. Like, usually there is. Like, here's the name I would give you is probably Foster Moreau. Like, and his salary's come up some, but like he's really been more involved the last 3 weeks, and everybody's off of him, right? Because he burned everybody for the first 2 weeks. So Foster Moreau basically doesn't exist. Like, so he's going to start again this weekend, but he's probably the cheapest one down there. That's like sub 4K. Like he's not, the men. But I can't even remember what he is, Andrew. I know he's sub 4K.
He's 3,800.
38. Yeah. So in that range, he's the one I like.
Where did you guys move Fant up to?
I got Fant to 11.
Okay. So I listed him as a sit. So if you read my start sit, I listed Fant as a sit. He's no longer a sit with all these other Broncos receivers out.
Too bad, Andrew. You already said he's a sit. It's already in the universe.
Sorry.
That's how this works.
All right, everyone. That's going to wrap up this edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, bringing you all the injuries in the week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed this entire year. We'll be back with so much more in 2022. So for Andrew, for Dwain, I'm Ian. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, take care, everybody.